All right, ladies. So for today's class, what we're going to do, our topic is migration inside and outside of the Caribbean, and our objectives. So our objectives for this class is that we're going to identify, our objective for this class is that we're going to identify the various patterns of migration inside and outside the Caribbean, list the reasons for migration, examine the impact of migration on the Caribbean, and examine the effects on the host countries. Now, the host countries that we're going to look at, I believe we're going to look at host countries for Wednesday's class. For tomorrow's class on a Tuesday, what you're going to do is that there's some multiple choice questions on the topics that you would have done before, and you're going to do that multiple choice quiz for tomorrow's class. I'm not sure the questions, so far I have about 10 questions, it could be more. Still putting the questions together. So that is for tomorrow's class. Wednesday we come again, we're going to look at this objective, which is examine the effects on the host country. Now, last time we left off, we looked at the impact of the indentured workers on the Caribbean, or the indentured workers. So we look at groups, two groups we would have looked at would have been the Chinese and the Indians, and we have seen their impact on the Caribbean. Now, those groups came into the Caribbean after slavery. Well, those groups came into the British Caribbean after slavery ended in 1838. All right. So in 1838, the Indians and the Chinese came into the Caribbean to work with other groups. Now, what we're doing is to look at migration in the Caribbean between migration inside and outside the Caribbean from the end of slavery to present. So that is our objective for today. How Caribbean people would have basically go about when it comes to migrating. All right. So the first thing, what is migration? We would have been going through migration. You had an essay on it. What is migration? Anyone? Quickly.
Sir?
Go ahead for me, please.
Migration is the movement of people from one place to another with the intentions of settling permanently or temporarily.
Yes, so we would have established that very definition in one of our earlier class, right? Now, we know for sure that migration is a movement of people. And so when people can also move from one part of a country to another, for example, quite a lot of Jamaicans have families, have no original route to Kingston and St. Andrew, but they are now living in Kingston and St. Andrew. That's why when it comes to Christmas, or when it comes to summer, or any of those different times your parents send you to country. So country, which is rural Jamaica. So you go to rural Jamaica to spend time with your families and so. Now, while I had a country, when I was growing up, when it comes to summer, and most of my neighbors in my community, or most of my friends in my community in which I grew up, was actually they were going to country to visit family members. You have some who actually was going to the US to visit family members, Canada, US, all of these different places. and some would have gone to other islands, for example, Cayman, when it comes to summertime, Turks, all of these different places. So we know for sure that there's migration that has been taking place, and it's reflected in how we would have, or we as well, when I was a child, how we would have spent our summer holidays or Christmas holidays. Now, I'm going to ask someone to read this for me, this quote.
Sir?
Go ahead, Blair.
Okay. Migration and the Caribbean. Migration is one of the greatest themes of Caribbean history. Caribbean populations are almost the result of immigration from Africa, Asia, and Europe since the 16th century. Since the end of slavery in the 19th century, there has been frequent and often large-scale migration both within and outside the Caribbean basin as people sought brighter and political prospects that they perceived were available at home.
All right, very good. So one of the things that these scholars would have argued is that migration is one of the greatest themes of Caribbean history. The Caribbean is about migration. All of us came here on a ship, and back then we would have gone elsewhere, either on a ship or on a plane. We not only stay in which, well, especially people of Afro descent, we have not stayed on the island on which they would have brought us, but some of us would have gone to several different islands to settle. And so it is in fact that migration is one of the greatest themes of Caribbean history. And it is known that the Caribbean is a migratory space. People coming in, everybody would have come in from before India, well, from the indigenous people, the Africans, the Indians, the different European groups coming into the region. Now, there are two types of migration that the syllabus asks us to look at. One that is called intraregional migration or intra-Caribbean migration. Intraregional migration or intra-Caribbean migration. Anyone can tell me what intraregional or intra-Caribbean mean? What that migration entails?
Sir, it has to do with moving within the Caribbean region itself. So from
So,
Jamaica
yes,
to
go
Cayman,
ahead.
for example.
Yes. Go ahead, Elliot. The example.
Oh, the example was like from Jamaica to Cayman.
From Jamaica to Cayman, very good. Inter-regional migration. And that is a very good example about migration. Quite a lot of Jamaicans live in Cayman currently. My father lived there when I was a child. My grandmother lived there until retirement. She lived there for a number of years. So I've been going to Cayman since I was 4 or 5. Yes, because my grandmother would have left Jamaica when I was 3. Yes, when I was 3, and I went to visit her when I was 5 in Cayman. And every year after that, every holiday I was basically in Cayman to visit my grandmother. All right. And so we know migration happens. Then you have people moving to other places in the region, people moving from, for example, you have quite a lot of groups people moving from one area to the next. For example, another example of interregional migration is people from St. Vincent moving to Barbados, people from Guyana moving to Barbados, and you have some Jamaican living in Barbados. You have also the Haitians who moved from Haiti, whether documented or non-documented Haitians who actually leave Haiti to live in the Bahamas. We have people move from here to Cuba, all over. So the Caribbean is a space of intra-regional migration. Now, the other thing is that when we're looking at intra-regional migration, sorry, when we're looking at intra-regional migration, it also incorporates places like in Central America, like Costa Rica, Panama, Honduras, those territories in Central America. They usually graft them within the concept of interregional migration. Now, extra-regional migration or migration to the metropole, what are we talking about? Anyone?
Sir,
Extra-regional, go ahead, Jackson.
So extra-regional migration is basically the movement from one region to another. So for example, someone moving from the Caribbean, from Jamaica to England or
Yes.
in Europe.
Mm-hmm. And you are correct. So one of the, when we're talking about the extra-regional migration, we're looking at, and the metropole, when we talk about the metropole, we are talking about Europe, places in Europe like France, Spain, Holland, Britain. Those are territories when we're talking about extra-regional migration. Also, not extra-regional, the metropole. Also, the US has, because of their superpower, somehow been grafted into the concept of the metropole. So we have people in the Caribbean moving to the US, Canada. Where else? We have people moving as far as other territories in the world, such as our continent, such as Africa, Asia. Quite a lot of people moving from the Caribbean now to work in Japan, China, and those different places, right? Now, examples of intra-regional migration. I'm going to look at, for example, one of the first example of intra-regional migration would have happened in 1898. Now, in 1898, Cuba would have received their, not received, they would have gained their independence after the Spanish-American War. And after the Spanish-American War, they actually wanted persons to work on the sugar plantation. And so quite a lot of people from the British West Indies went to Cuba to work on the on the sugar plantations in Cuba. Another example is that quite a lot of Jamaicans would have gone to work on the banana plantations in Costa Rica and Honduras. And I'm telling you, a lot of them. In fact, a neighbor of mine, her mother was from Costa Rica, and so her father went to Costa Rica to work on the banana plantation, and he actually found his wife there and brought her here to Jamaica, and they lived and have their children here. I doubt any of the children were actually born in Costa Rica. I'm not sure, but I know that she was actually born here in Jamaica. Another example is that you have quite a lot of Grenadians who would have gone to Venezuela to work in the oil industry. Also, people from Trinidad and Grenada would have gone to the ABC Islands to work, Aruba, Bonaire, and Curacao. And in 1884, we have citizens from the Leeward Islands. the Leeward Islands, such as Antigua and those other territories who would have gone to Santo Domingo to work on banana plantation. And one of the greatest, I believe, and I should not, well, one of the greatest migratory pattern from intra-regional migration pattern is to Panama to work on two periods. People from the British West Indies went to Panama first to work on the railway, and the second time they went to build the canal. So there are two periods of migration to Panama. Now, when it comes to Panama, the migration to Panama is, you have, for example, in between 1850 to 1855, when they were building the railway in Panama, you had 45,000 Jamaicans who would have gone to Panama to work. Also, yes, 45,000 Jamaicans would have gone to Panama to work. And they were very much involved in the construction of the Panama railways. In fact, when they started to construct the canal, you had 84,000 Jamaicans who went to Panama to work on the canal. This is separate and apart from the early 45,000. And also you had groups coming from Barbados, Martinique, Guadeloupe, Trinidad, Grenada. Now, in the first part of the migratory pattern from 1850 to 1855 to Panama, majority of the British Caribbean workers came from Jamaica and Grenada during that period. Now, we also have migration from Jamaica to Barbados, Antigua, Grenada, etc., other places, and people moving from Barbados to Jamaica, from Antigua to Jamaica, and we have people moving all over. But another major phenomenon that happens and still continues in the Caribbean is the movement of Haitians from Antigua to the Bahamas. So we know for sure that the Caribbean is a space where people actually move within the Caribbean space. Now, extra-regional migration, Caribbean people has also migrated to places like Brazil. Most of us would have gone, our family members in the United States, Canada, and Europe, especially the United States. So we know for extra-regional migration, these are some of the areas that we would have gone. So that is one. Now, ladies, what are some of the reasons, or what were some of the reasons why people migrate? From your own, what you can theorize.
Sir, working opportunities.
Working opportunities is one. Yes, any other reason?
The crime.
Crime? Crime where?
Conditions.
Oh, you're saying crime is one of the reasons why people migrate?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Sir,
All
in terms
right.
of
You have an example of that?
Sir, in terms of where they're leaving from, they're leaving the crime behind in, for example, Jamaica. I know that crime exists everywhere, but probably it's less over there. I don't know.
All right. Very good. Very good. So people leave because of crime. Yes, Jackson. Any other reason?
Better standards of living.
Better standard of living. Ashley?
Sir, for school,
For
better
school,
education.
for better education, yes. That is correct. Hunter?
So I was gonna say school, but yeah.
Yes, you are correct. All of us You're correct, ladies. Those are some of the reasons why people migrate. And so my list here is that I separate them into two categories or three categories. One of the first thing why people migrate, well, one of the reasons Caribbean people migrate is to escape political instability within a country, right? Now, during the Cuban Revolution, although I believe that the syllabus is, that's my personal view, I believe this is very not well US-based perspective on migration. But the truth is that people migrate because of political reasons. Well, the Cuban Revolution is one such example of political instability in which quite a lot of Cubans left Cuba and migrate to the United States and settled in areas such as Florida. So if you go to Florida right now, ladies, you will think that you're in a Spanish-speaking country. Actually, they speak more Spanish than English in Florida, right? Or maybe because Florida was originally controlled by the Spanish, so they settled it by default. So to escape political instability is one reason. After the Cuban Revolution, Fidel Castro, well, not long before the Cuban Revolution, Cuba has always had some level of instability when it comes to their politics. Also, before the Grenada Revolution and during the Grenada Revolution, quite a lot of Grenadians would have migrated to the US and Canada, Jamaica in the 1970s and 80s. A lot of Jamaicans migrated during the 70s and 80s. If you should ask any of your family members currently living in the United States or Canada or UK, in which year they would have migrated to these territories, they would tell you maybe 1974, you know, left in 1980. They left Jamaica when Jamaica was basically politically unstable during that period. There was quite a lot of political violence in Jamaica during the 70s and 80s. In fact, in 1980 election, in the 1980 election, 1980 election, ladies, over 800 Jamaicans would have died during that election period. Over 800 Jamaicans would have died. And so a lot of people were actually fearful of their lives. And so they would have left. Haiti always have political instability where they always assassinate their leaders in Haiti. And there's always political upheaval there, so people are going to leave. Some economic reasons why people migrate. People, as you would have mentioned, people migrate to escape poverty. The Caribbean is a space of where poverty is very, very high. I do not know the figures for Jamaica now, but most Caribbean countries, the poverty rate in most Caribbean countries is at over 13% of the, let us say below 13% of the country live below the poverty line. Haiti, for example, over 60% of Haitians live below the poverty line. But in most countries, I believe in 2010 in Jamaica, 23% of Jamaicans would have lived below the poverty line. While in other Caribbean countries, like for example, Trinidad, it would have been around the same figure. And so people leave Jamaica because of the poverty that is here. And you need to escape the poverty, so you're going to migrate. Another reason why people migrating is because of the high unemployment and underemployment. High unemployment, there's no work. You have one more year, well, not one more year. When you finish school next year. So next year, some of you are going to make some very rough, hard decision. One, am I going to go to university or am I going to work? If you have some very strong links in this country, or your family knows a lot of people, then if you decide to work, then you could get a work. If your family have no links, then guess what? It is going to be very difficult to find a job, even with your grade ones and all of these different stuff. Go ahead.
So like I'm saying that I have friends that have the capes and the grade ones, and then they would work in a bank filing some stuff for like 7,000 a week. And I'm saying, how can you be paying somebody so low? And you have people in America that are like 16 or whatever, and they're working in a Starbucks, and the minimum wage over there is much higher. Like Jamaicans' minimum wage is like, it just, wow. I don't know.
Yes,
how
and
anybody
these
can
are
survive.
girls from St. Andrew, right? Or
Yes,
from
sir. All
others.
over JC, Immaculate, they leave, and like I just said, they have no links. So basically, they have to work their way up. So it's very hard.
You have to work your way up, especially when you come from families that don't have any link. Yeah, it is very, 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 very difficult to find jobs in this country. I remember when I left JC, my first job was at Scotia. I used to do the same thing as what your friends doing at Scotia, right? And that was a big thing to get that thing at Scotia at the time, although I went straight to university. I went university and I worked Scotia, so I was doing both. So at the time, where you say it's 7,000 they're paying now? When I was at Scotia I'm not telling the year. When I was at Scotia, I was getting $10,000 for the week. That's what I used to get at Scotia then. And that's a pretty long time ago. So I don't understand how they're paying people $7,000 now, and I used to get 10,000. And when I used to get that $10,000, all I used to do with that $10,000 was, you just start work and you get some money. I used to just live at Devanos with my little girlfriend back then, right? And so all of my money finished before the payday comes. That if I have money to go to work. So we know for sure that there's high unemployment that is happening in the Caribbean and people cannot find work. You see, especially at countries like Barbados, in which they have free education there, where a lot of people have degrees, they cannot find work there. So you go to, for example, when I was living in Barbados, I had friends who were actually working at the gas station in Barbados. So they are employed with degree and master's, first class honors degree, first class masters with, well, not first class masters, masters with distinction, and they were working at Esso gas station down Black Rock in Barbados. So we know for sure that underemployment happens in the Caribbean. Most of those people now, they move to Canada. So underemployment happens. You have maybe persons who have their PhDs in the Caribbean. And if you have a PhD, you're at a secondary school teaching. Underemployed, because if you have a PhD, you're supposed to either have some administrative work at a school, or you're supposed to be at a university working. But most time in the Caribbean, that is the reality. And it is all over the entire Caribbean. in Cayman, although Cayman is very wealthy, a friend of mine in Cayman, she had a, they call that again? She had a law degree, qualified attorney, and she's Caymanian, Black Caymanian, and could not get a job as an attorney in Cayman. Because most of the law firms in Cayman, like Walker's and all of the top law firms, they tend to employ a lot of white people to work in the law firm. So she ended up being on the radio and in a classroom teaching. And so one of the reasons why people migrate is because of underemployment. You're qualified, you have the qualification, they just cannot find the job. Another reason, low wages. As you would have mentioned, the wages are pretty low in some Caribbean countries. And even in some Caribbean countries that the wages are much higher, the cost of living in those countries are very high. So the wage, you're basically living from hand to mouth. Other reasons, IMF programs, when countries go through IMF programs, we're going to look at IMF programs later on in this syllabus. But when countries implement IMF programs, the governments are asked to go through strict restriction in terms of their budget, and this constraint on the economy also cause a lot of problems in the local economy, so people tend to migrate. And you leave because of employment opportunities. Another is wage differential, meaning that the wages in the US and in Canada, they are much higher than in the Caribbean. So that's why you have a lot of teachers and nurses who are leaving here, the Caribbean, to go to the US, Canada, or the UK to work. All right? So these are the economic reasons why people migrate. Another reason why people migrate is for non-economic reasons. You migrate because of education, you get a scholarship, you go to university, and you migrate. So for example, if Hunter, you leave, you go to University of Pennsylvania, right? Or Pennsylvania State University. You go to that university, while you're there, you're studying, you go to study. That's your main reason why you go. But while you're studying, you realize that a young man like you there, both of you start to date. And so when you finish studying now, you decide and said, what am I going to do? Am I going to go home or am I going to remain? You end up get married and you remain. And that happens to a lot of people when you go away. When you leave to study, especially when you leave the island to study, you leave with the expectation of returning home. But in reality, you never return home because you might meet upon someone, you get married, and you just don't return. Some people migrate because of access to better health care. So in the US, they think that the healthcare is much better, so people migrate to the US for that. People want citizenship. So for example, when you travel on some Caribbean passports, you get a lot of problem. You have to get visa, all of these different stuff. So people migrate because they want to gain citizenship of another country, so they can get a passport, so they can travel freely without any hindrance or have to go to the embassy and all of these different stuff. And most of us would have had families who are in these different countries. So we migrate to reunite with our families. Females tend to migrate, some females tend to migrate to flee domestic violence. In my research that I have done, I've come across females who say that, listen, I was married in the church, but my husband used to beat me. And she said, all right, I just called my sister. And my sister said, listen, buy a ticket, send the plane ticket for you, jump on the plane, never return. Because of domestic violence. They migrate to flee that domestic violence. I've known persons also who, friends of mine who, they grew up without their mother, father. Well, they grew up without their mother because their father used to abuse their mother, physical abuse. And so the lady just take up herself, leave, and she disappear, leaving children, husband, everybody, and just disappear, right? We also migrate because of perception. We believe that foreign is better. And so we tend to migrate to places because of the perception that these countries have better opportunities, better this, better that. So that's one of the reasons why we migrate. Another reason why people migrate is to flee discrimination. So for example, people in the LGBT community, they cannot live their life without any form of problem or hindrance. Well, they just always face discrimination in their country, especially persons from the gay communities. And so they migrate and they leave. And there's actually a program at the US Embassy and also in Canada that facilitate the migration of persons who are not able to, who maybe walk on the road, basically you're homosexual or you're gay or a lesbian, you walk on the road and somebody just, every time you walk on the road, they beat you, they burn down your house, your life is at threat. The US Embassy already say, all right, your life is at threat, let us accept you in the US and they will give you citizenship in the US, right? So those are some of the reasons for migration. Now, my question to you now is, what are some of the positive effects of migration on the Caribbean? Positive effects. When people leave, what are some of the positive effects? And for us, Les Jackson.
Sir, increase remittances. So for example, when people leave the Caribbean,
Yes.
and they have family in Jamaica, they tend to send back money, which is like a big part of the daily Jamaican lifestyle. So a lot of people like send back money for their family, which increases remittances for the country, which increases the amount of money the country has to spend.
Very good. Remittances is one of the main benefits of migration. And remittances is when you send money to your country of origin. So the country that you migrate to is called the host country, and the country that you are from is called the country of origin. So if you should migrate and you send back money to your country, that is your country of origin. So in remittances, they send back quite a lot of money. In fact, in the Caribbean, we depend on remittances. A lot of households, if Western Union or MoneyGram should close, a lot of families cannot survive. A lot of families cannot survive because your mother might be abroad, your sister might be abroad, your father might be abroad working, and you depend on that money. If you pass the Western Union on a weekend, especially a Friday, a Saturday, you see the long line outside that people actually waiting on money to come from abroad so they can live. Especially when it comes to schooling. You have school going on, people go and ask for, You've called a family member, asked for help to send you to school and all of these different stuff. So remittances is one of the positive effects. Now, listen now, when I send US dollars to Jamaica, the government don't give me in US. The government will not give. So I send the money. So for example, I send money to Deidre. So Deidre, I send money to you. You're my daughter. I send money to you for your stuff. When I send the money in the United States, I send it in the US dollars, right? That US dollar is going to Jamaica. But when you reach to the Western Union, they are giving you in Jamaican dollars. The government is taking that US dollars and putting their account so they can use that US dollars for their, to buy goods and other stuff, right? So that is one. So we have covered remittances. Hunter, another positive effect.
Sir, it increases the skills that the Caribbean people have. So like example, you migrate for school, certain programs are
Yeah,
better overseas. So when they, finish their degree, they can come back and educate more people and have jobs that are very scarce in the Caribbean.
that is true. That is true. That is so true. You have any examples that I can give?
Sir, I heard that like a career that I want to the actual science is very scarce because people move away from it because they hear that the exams are hard. So not many Caribbean people are actuaries.
Okay. So, and yeah, you think it is that a lot of people is not, but they have an actuarial science program here at Mona.
Yes, sir. But I don't.
But is it that the banks don't want to employ people that are Caribbean trained?
Sir, I'm really not sure. Sir, I just know that you have to do exams, and I think they're US-based exams.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, sir. And I think it's like 7.
I agree with you. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure about the program, but that's a good example. So some other positive effects of migration on the Caribbean is that one, it provides employment, shockingly. When people leave, where am I? When people leave the Caribbean, so for example, you're in a class with 30 students and if 15 students, well, not class, you're in a workplace where 15 people, well, 30 people in your department. And if 15 people in your department migrate, that means that there's job opening for 15 positions. So persons who are actually looking for a job can actually fill those positions, provide employment for people. So once you leave, then it could be a positive effect for your country of origin, although sometimes we see it as a negative, but it can also be a positive effect. For example, if you have a group of people working as maybe secretaries, once they leave their position and go abroad, then they're going to need people to fill the position. So that provide employment for them. Another thing is something that we call hometown associations. Now, hometown associations are groups in the United States or abroad that actually formed by immigrants overseas. So for example, I am from Jamaica, I move abroad, a group of Jamaicans in maybe Philadelphia we form a group that is called the Philadelphia Association of Jamaica, right? You have some girls from St. Andrew High School leave from St. Andrew, migrate to Atlanta. They form the St. Andrew High School Old Girl Association of Atlanta, the Jamaica College Old Boy Association of Atlanta, right? Or Florida or New York. And you have all of these different hometown associations. I might come from a rural area in St. Catherine and say, for instance, Linstead. I could go abroad. When I go abroad, I meet up with other people from Linstead. I form an association, the Association of Jamaicans from Linstead, just an example. So in the US, Canada, UK, you have quite a lot of hometown associations. And these associations have given back quite a lot to the country, their country of origin. For example, let us look at your school girls from your school would have contributed significantly to scholarships to other students there, etc. The University of the West Indies, they have their grouping in the US, and they have given millions to the school, to UA, to help with different stuff. Right, I believe last week I read where Kingston College, the association abroad in Kingston College, would have donated, I believe, $15 million. So all of the KC old boys living abroad sent $15 million to KC to help them with COVID preparation and all of these different stuff. The hometown associations are very important. Another thing is that tourism. Tourism is very important. Once people go abroad, they're going to bring back your friends here, or bring back your friends in the Caribbean, and that is going to help with tourism. So that's a benefit. Lobby to influence foreign policies. We are going to look at this tomorrow. Not tomorrow, we're going to look at this on Wednesday. So for example, they have like Kamala Harris, who is of Jamaican descent. She is now in power. Say, for instance, when she is the vice president of the US, and the president say, listen, we need to put some sanction on Jamaica. She can lobby for us in Jamaica. As if another Caribbean country have a problem, she can also lobby for the other Caribbean country. So another reason is to lobby to influence foreign policies. Once people migrate, they help the host the country of origin by lobbying on behalf of those countries. Investment, people live abroad, leave the Caribbean, they go abroad, they come back to the Caribbean, they open up stores, they build plazas, factories, all of these different stuff, and market for export. Once we know people living abroad, then companies like Grace Kennedy and Lasco and all of these companies, even you might have your own little small business, you send goods abroad to send for your family. Let us look at a perfect example. Auntie Donna. You know Auntie Donna? Anybody follow her on social media?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
And do you realize Christmas is coming up? So Auntie Donna is going to send her cakes, her fruit cakes, because she have a group of people living in North America that needs the cake. Auntie Donna, she say her cake tastes bad. She say her tastes bad cake, right? So we have all of these are some of the positive effects. Now, some negative effects on migration, just to close off, of Caribbean people migrating is that we can also have brain drain for certain sector. It is not a complete brain drain as all people want to. And brain drain is when you lose skilled workers. So for example, when math and science teachers migrate, there's a serious negative problem in Jamaica because there's not much math and science teachers in Jamaica. So, and America and the US also have a problem where they don't have enough math and science teachers. So they are taking all the math and science teachers, and that causes a problem for the schools in Jamaica. There are schools in Jamaica right now that don't have any teacher for science. They have to wait until evening to go to another school to do a science subject, and that's the reality. Another thing, loss of skilled labor, such as, for example, the nurses. Quite a lot of nurses leave to go abroad, and that also is a negative effect because most of the hospitals don't have the skilled nurses there. So if you're in a surgery, you don't have a skilled nurse there, somebody who is trained within that surgical area to help with the surgery. Crime. People go abroad, they send back gun to Jamaica, or send back gun to the Caribbean, or you send drugs to the Caribbean. Well, the Caribbean people send drugs over there, they send back guns. We don't manufacture guns in the Caribbean. We don't know how to make guns, but a lot of guns are here. Who send back the guns in the Caribbean? People who have migrated and leave the Caribbean. They are the ones who send the guns here in barrels. HIV and AIDS, people come back in the Caribbean, leave from abroad, come into the Caribbean, they are infected with all different types of diseases. I'm going to use COVID. Before COVID, well, before the Prime Minister opened up the country, they had no cases of COVID. Once him opened up the country and people start to come back to Jamaica because a family member died or they come back to visit and all of these different stuff, the COVID case them just increase significantly, right? So we can see that disease spread every time, especially when it comes to Christmas and around January, December, January, we always face a lot of cold in the Caribbean and cold and flu. All of that coming from abroad. They bring back all of those germs and diseases here. You go away to visit your family members here, you bring it back here, you bring the flu, you bring the cold, and it just mash up the place. Another negative effects of migration is that when people migrate, families are disrupted. Quite a lot of families are disrupted. Children remain, most time children remain with their grandparents. Those children are called barrel children. Why they call them barrel children? Because they usually send back, most time the parents just send things in a barrel for the children, right? And so you don't know your mother, you don't know your father. And sometimes barrel children are the ones who are involved in crime and violence. Not every barrel children, not generalizing, but some. All right, ladies, so these are some of the negative effects. We continue to look at migration and the external migration on on Wednesday. Tomorrow, you use the time to do the multiple choice questions on Google Class. All right, ladies?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, bye.
Bye,
Bye.
sir.
Bye, sir.
Bye-bye.